until 7 o'clock. As Damien taking another day off, he will be back with us tomorrow as we march on towards the 8th week of the college football season. So we are, at least for the vast majority of the country, halfway through the college football season. So going to take some time to look back at what we've learned from the first half today, specifically with Alabama and with Auburn. But we'll have time for that a little bit later because we do want to get you ready for this weekend as well. I know a lot of people very excited. Of course, it's the third Saturday in October, so a big matchup there in Tuscaloosa this weekend, a rivalry game there between them and the Tennessee Volunteers. The Volunteers, who I might have added, have won 2 of the last 3 in this matchup against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then, of course, we also know you have Auburn as they're going to be taking on Missouri this weekend and what appears to be a pretty important game for the future of that program and head coach Hugh Freeze. So a lot of us are a lot for us to get excited about this weekend. You have multiple ranked matchups in the SEC as well. So it's going to be an absolutely fantastic weekend of college football. And so we will take a look ahead and let you know what you have to look forward to. But first, we'll take a quick look back at last night because we are in the midst now of 49, I believe it's 49 straight days of live football action, whether it's college or NFL. And we are right in the thick of that. So last night you had 3 college games that you could have enjoyed. You have, speaking of Hugh Freeze, you had Liberty as they were taking on New Mexico State. Liberty getting a 30-27 win there last night over New Mexico State. So Liberty now 3-4 on the season. Not the kind of records you're used to seeing with the Liberty Flames here in recent memory, but they get a nice win last night. You had South Alabama in action last night, and it's just been a rough year there for the Jaguars as they fell 14-15 to Arkansas State yesterday there in some Sun Belt action. So Arkansas State actually was down 14-3 going into the fourth quarter of that game. They scored 12 points all in the fourth quarter and shut out South Alabama. So they get a win there 15-14. And then you had FIU, which is I like to call it is Pitbull University. If you didn't know, he is the one of the sponsors there of the football program at FIU. But they beat Western Kentucky 25-6 last night. So that was your slate of college football action on a Tuesday as things got started off for you there. Tonight, you're going to have a couple more games in action. You got Delaware taking on JSU. So JSU, they're going to be in action tonight at 6 o'clock there, hosting that game over in Jacksonville. And then you're also going to have UTEP and Sam Houston. So as we roll along with the streak of football, that's what you have to look forward to tonight as well. But as we know, a banner weekend here in the SEC this weekend. I mean, you start off at 11 a.m. You're going to have LSU and Vanderbilt facing off there in Nashville. So Vanderbilt, they got a bye after the loss to Alabama. What have they learned? What have they taken away from that? Hopefully have their guys healthy and ready to go. And then similarly for LSU, it's can you score more than 23 points? Because that is something we have not seen them do against Power 4 competition this year. And this would be certainly a matchup where you would think points are going to be necessary for LSU to go into Nashville and get what is technically an upset, which is kind of weird to hear, say, Bear. But the fact that Vanderbilt now, I mean, we got all the hype against Alabama 2 weeks ago, and now you come off a bye and you're favored against a top 10 LSU team at home. I can't remember Vanderbilt ever being a favored, according to Vegas, in a top 10 matchup in my lifetime.
I don't believe they have ever. Cole asked us yesterday on Mac and Cube. I think it was 70-something times they've taken on a top 10 team, and I don't think they've been favored once. So there's a first time for everything. So kudos to Vanderbilt for building the program to get to this point, and never really thought it would kind of be this kind of game to where LSU Vanderbilt, the winner of this game, I don't want to say has the inside track, but you need to start talking about playoff. Because granted, yes, both teams, whoever ends up winning, it still has a lot ahead of them. But as it stands right now, both teams only have one conference loss. The loser of this is going to have 2 conference losses, and it's going to be tough to dig out of that hole, let alone maybe make the playoff with that. But the winner of this game, all of a sudden, has a very, very good win on their resume, and all of a sudden, okay, like maybe whatever team wins it, whether it be LSU or especially Vanderbilt, all right, let's start taking them seriously, maybe in terms of the playoff.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point with something you just said there. It's crazy that for both of these teams, you would look at this and go, "Oh yeah, that's easily their best win that they have this season." Not crazy so much for Vanderbilt, but for LSU, and that's not all their fault, right? Because we thought Clemson was going to be pretty good, and turns out Clemson's not very good. But as you said, right, whoever wins is going to have an inside track, at least, kind of in that top tier of playoff contenders out of the SEC. And if you're Vanderbilt, I mean, it's going to be a difficult stretch here. Because after LSU, you've got Missouri, then you've got to go to Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee to finish it up. So, I mean, outside of the Kentucky game, I think those are all certainly going to be challenges there for Vanderbilt. And for LSU, after this game, you are going to have a bye there in this group. But after Vanderbilt, you have Texas A&M at home, and then you're on the road in Tuscaloosa taking on Alabama. So after Vanderbilt, if things stay the way they are right now, you're going to have back-to-back top 6 matchups after Vanderbilt. So yeah, this would be a big win for either side as they try to punch their ticket to a college football playoff later this season. So that's your 11 a.m. kickoff, and that's, I mean, again, like Alabama, Missouri last week, the fact that that's what we're starting the day off with is fantastic. It's going to be a great day of football. You're going to have Oklahoma at South Carolina. That's at 11:45. Interested in that one just to see how Oklahoma bounces back after looking like a shell of themselves against Texas last week. So that's obviously going to be an intriguing game. Texas A&M at Arkansas, that's going to be at 2:30. Texas A&M a little over a touchdown favorite in that one right now, but I've already seen some people calling for an outright Arkansas upset. They made it very interesting against Tennessee last weekend, so we'll see if they can spoil Texas A&M's perfect season this weekend. And then you have a top 10 matchup, I guess, based on the rankings, the biggest game in college football this weekend, as you have Ole Miss traveling between the hedges to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Of course, this is a game that Ole Miss dominated last year in Oxford and really kind of opened a lot of people's eyes that Lane Kiffin and a Lane Kiffin-led team could do that. But now you got to go on the road to Georgia. And could Georgia have suffered 2 home losses in the last month when all is said and done after having a 33-game home winning streak? That would certainly be something. But a big opportunity there for Ole Miss, and that's a big game for Georgia because you certainly don't want to be at 5-2, looking up at 5 games or 4 games left in SEC play, and then Georgia Tech at the end of the year, who looks quite good. And then your afternoon slate in the SEC, you're going to have Texas at Kentucky. So we'll see if Texas can keep things rolling there after the big win over Oklahoma. 6:45, you've got Missouri traveling to the Plains to take on Auburn, of course. We talked a little bit about that one yesterday, and we'll continue to do so.
Don't sleep on Mississippi State at Florida, 315 SEC Network.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for calling that out. Yes, Mississippi State and Florida. Florida, I guess, an opportunity to maybe we'll have a better idea of what they are because we saw them beat Texas, but then they were competitive with A&M, and then A&M kind of pulled away. I think this is a good barometer for 2 teams that are, I guess you would say, probably in like if you were to rank them in the SEC right now, probably somewhere in like the 12 to 13, that kind of a range, but still 2 very good teams.
This win could go a long way of pushing whichever team maybe towards the bottom of the middle tier as opposed to, like you said, being in the bottom quarter, the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Kentucky's probably got that number 16 spot. But the winner of this game can go a long way, especially if you're Mississippi State, to kind of push your ways. Yeah. I mean, that puts you at 5 wins. And there's still, a good bit ahead of you if you're Mississippi State, and you have nothing but conference games left. But you still have Arkansas on that schedule. So if you can get Florida, chances are you're probably going bowling. On the flip side, if you don't, it might be a rough road to hoe over the last back half of your schedule.
Yeah, you might be looking at like a 1-5 finish here in the back half for Mississippi State. But I mean, look, if they could get this win. You mentioned Arkansas. I think they're good enough to get one more win. And going to a bowl game this year under Jeff Lebby would be, at least in my opinion, I think that would be very, very impressive. And then, of course, at 6:30, you have the 3rd Saturday in October there as Tennessee, number 11 Tennessee, going to travel down to Tuscaloosa to take on number 6 Alabama.
As you point out, yes, this is a very good week, a stacked week. And I don't know if there's a reason they made it this way, but this is the only week. Not only does every SEC team play, but this is the only week where it's all SEC on SEC
Yeah, it is
with
kind of weird
everyone
the way
playing.
this. Yeah, it's weird the way that the schedule works out like that, but I guess you'll take it. And the fact that we just ran through the entire SEC schedule and only one of those matchups, Mississippi State and Florida, didn't feature a ranked team.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just, again, goes to show the depth of the conference here in the Southeastern Conference. You're also going to have across the country Utah, BYU. That's a ranked top 25 Big 12 matchup. USC, Notre Dame, a big one there. Notre Dame out of the playoff hunt, you would assume, with a loss here, and USC putting themselves right in the thick of the conversation if they can pull off that win. So a lot of intriguing matchups as we get closer and closer to Saturday. And then, of course, we'll break down those games a little more in depth for you tomorrow and on Friday. But one of the big ones, as we know, the big one here in the state, Alabama, Tennessee, third Saturday in October. Alabama looking to even it up at 2-2 the last 4 years against the Tennessee Volunteers. But how is Ty Simpson? How is the Alabama QB getting the Tide ready to face the Vols? We'll let you hear from him next, right here on Morning JOX. 6:16 here on your Wednesday morning. Conrad and John here with you until 7 o'clock when we'll hand you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Turning our attention to the weekend to come in college football. And, of course, one of the big ones is going to be Tennessee and Alabama as they will face off there in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night for the third Saturday in October. And one of the players that will be featured in that game as current Heisman frontrunner Ty Simpson, as we know, the quarterback there for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and could be a big day for him as he's going up against, statistically at least, the worst passing defense in the SEC and the Tennessee Volunteers. You would think that would be a recipe for a pretty big day for the Alabama offense, and we will see if that comes to fruition on Saturday. But how about how that team and how Ty Simpson's getting his team ready for a big rivalry game, the Alabama Crimson Tide's fourth straight game against a top 25 opponent. So we're actually going to start, before we hear from Ty Simpson, we're going to have to go to Caden Proctor first. So this is the Alabama offensive lineman, offensive weapon, Swiss Army knife, whatever you want to call him now, because he's all over the field. But this is Caden Proctor yesterday after practice, him talking about Ty Simpson's leadership and maybe a little bit of a fiery moment from the Alabama quarterback earlier this week.
As he wants to improve on his pass game, he brings us along. He's just a great leader, speaks all the time. Ripped our ass, when we were in the team meeting yesterday. So he knows how to get us riled up, and he's a great leader.
What was the message from Ty in that meeting?
Just that we need to be better. I mean, we still haven't played a full game as offensive line, as quarterback, as any position. We haven't played a shutout game, which is hard to do, but that's what's expected of us.
So there you go. There's Caden Proctor talking about his quarterback, Ty Simpson, and how he got after the offense a little bit on Monday after, let's call it what it is, right? The offense has been very efficient at times, but they've stuttered at times in the second half of these games. And I think a lot of people walked away from Georgia. Maybe you felt a little bit about Vanderbilt because you did get that late touchdown from Jam, but certainly with Georgia and Missouri, you're happy that you won the game if you're an Alabama fan, but I think a lot of us probably look out there and go, man, feels like that's a game Alabama probably could have won by 14, 10, 17, maybe have a little more space than they actually did, but the offense not finishing drives there in the second half in some of these games, and Ty Simpson aware of that and wanting to continue to improve on that. You heard Ryan Grubb earlier in the week when he talked to the media, pointing that out as, yeah, there's still a lot of things that we can do better as an offense. We're leaving a lot of points out there on the field, and that's something I think they recognize is going to have to change moving forward if they want to make a college football playoff and contend for a national title. So you got to hear Caden Proctor. That was him talking about Ty Simpson getting after the offense on Monday. Now, this is Ty Simpson yesterday. He was asked about those comments by Caden Proctor and what his message was to his teammates this week.
I think it's going to stay between, the offense, but I just kind of told it how it was, how I felt as a leader. It's my job to make sure that I get the best out of guys, and I get the best out of myself. I just felt like the last couple games we hadn't, executed very well in some things. So I just wanted to make sure that the guys understand, what the standard is here and what the standard is of this offense. But yeah, I won't keep that between us.
So there you go. There's Ty Simpson. Not going to release any details, as you would expect, but certainly a good thing to hear when your quarterback is taking a leadership role that way, and certainly something he seems to be growing into. And when you're playing at such a high level on the field, right, guys are going to naturally follow you because you are carrying that team in a lot of ways, at least offensively at times. And it's been really, really impressive to watch. But not only does Ty Simpson get after the entire team, as we know, we've heard him after the last couple of games. He's very critical of himself. And so this is Ty Simpson. This would be cut number 5. This was Ty Simpson yesterday talking about the areas that he still thinks he can continue to improve this season.
Yeah, I can get the ball out quicker, understand that, just because, they're bringing some type of pressure, right, I got to understand, I can get the ball out quicker in the flat and on my checkdowns. I can not take as many sacks, when I get out of the pocket, right, understand situational ball better on third down. Instead of waiting on the big ball, just kind of taking what they give me, just some things like that. I got to clean up, but it's also disappointing because it's easy stuff. You know what I mean? And I got to make sure that I help my teammates, in that type of aspect because they count on me for a lot of stuff, and I'm not executing that. And I'm putting us in a bad position. So.
Pretty cool when you hear a guy that, again, is the front runner for a Heisman Trophy, and he's getting up in front of the media after 5 straight wins and standing there and telling you, yeah, I'm putting us in bad spots sometimes. This is on me, and taking a lot of accountability for it. You heard him do that with the sacks the last couple of weeks that he's taken. And I mean, Kalen DeBoer even brought it up on Monday in his press conference. If somebody asked him about, are all those sacks on Ty? And it's, no, I mean, some of it's on the offensive line, some of it's on Ty Simpson, but, not surprised to hear that Ty Simpson is taking complete responsibility for the sacks, is what Kalen DeBoer said. So clearly a guy that is not, at least based on what he says outwardly, is not too focused on, I guess statistically how great he's playing. It's just he understands he's a coach's kid, right? And he seems to have that mindset as he wants to get the best out of himself. And winning is great, but he realizes that if you don't continue to improve, eventually you are ultimately going to get beat. So very cool stuff to hear there from Ty Simpson about holding himself accountable.
It's amazing to see what winning can do to the perception of someone because, granted, it wasn't just Ty Simpson that was facing the blame from the FSU loss, but from the times he got in games over the previous years, Bama Nation was ready to be done with him and just cast him off like, oh, who's this guy? Who's going to do anything? And he waited his turn. And
well, he didn't play over Milrose, so he must be bad.
That may or may not have been the case, but it didn't help that the first time we actually saw him on the field, at least as a starter this season, it didn't look all that great. Now, It wasn't necessarily just him. The whole team didn't look all of that great. But slowly but surely, all of a sudden, he's now back in everyone's good graces, so much so that he could maybe bring another Heisman Trophy home to the Alabama Crimson Tide. So it's just fascinating to watch how everyone's gone from not quite burning him in effigy, but maybe throwing some lighter fluid on it, to all of a sudden praising him. It's wild to me.
Yeah, it's kind of a zero to hero pretty quickly situation, I think, for a lot of Alabama fans. And I think even people like, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I was optimistic about Ty Simpson because I thought the things that he did well, right? Maybe he didn't have the supreme athleticism of a Jalen Milroe, but you thought, all right, he's going to be a safer option, right? He's going to get the ball to the guys. He's going to make quick decisions. I did not see this. I thought he was going to be solid. I thought he'd be maybe a top 8 quarterback in the SEC. I did not think he would be the best quarterback in the SEC, and that's what he's at least looked like so far. So, yeah, it's been certainly a big surprise there with Ty Simpson. All right, let's finish up with this. We'll talk about, he was asked about the Tennessee secondary, and I brought that up because you have Alabama going up against a Tennessee defense where, at least in terms of passing yards per game, they are allowing the most of any team in the SEC. So Ty Simpson yesterday asked if he views the Tennessee secondary as vulnerable heading into Saturday.
I honestly don't think they're vulnerable at all, to be honest with you. They do a lot. They're good up front. They'll play man. They're physical. And they move around. They're fast. It's just like an SEC defense, you know what I mean? They're going to cause chaos. They're going to, they're going to blitz. All types of stuff, right? So we got to be on our P's and Q's and, got to be disciplined with everything, right? Because they're going to bring, every type thing they got at us. We just got to make sure that, we make plays, right? Because their offense is going to make plays with how tempo they are. We just need to understand it. We need to do our job. You know what I mean? Like, that's a good defense. I'm pretty sure they're, like, number 1 in sacks, number 1, turnovers and touchdowns, right? So we got to protect the ball, but I don't think they're vulnerable at all, to be honest with you. I think they're, one of the top defenses in the country.
He sounds just like DeBoer.
I was about to say, again, coach's son, mastering the coach's speak already. You're facing the worst secondary in the conference, and I think they're one of the best defenses in the country. Yeah, I mean, nobody believes. Look, maybe he does believe it because he views it as, well, that's the defense we're playing this week, so I view every defense we play as one of the best, and that's how he prepares. I get that part of it, but yeah, that's coach speak to the max right there, as Saber pointed out. So that's a little bit from Ty Simpson as he gets Alabama ready to take on the Tennessee Volunteers, and we will break that game down a little bit more for you tomorrow. When Damian comes back, we'll give you our keys to victory for that one for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But before we can look ahead, we also need to take a look back. So we're halfway through the season now for Alabama and for Auburn. I know we spent a lot of time with Auburn. It's probably, is there anything to be optimistic about? Well, in my opinion, yes, there actually are some things to be optimistic about with Auburn. Obviously, there are right now if you are an Alabama fan. So let's get into some impressions of Alabama and Auburn the first half of the season. I broke it down into 4 different categories. I'll share those with you next here on JOX. Oh, welcome back into the Wednesday edition of Morning JOX. Conrad Van Order, John Saber here with you. And as always, we appreciate you tuning it into us each and every day right here on JOX. So as I shared with you before the break, want to get into some takeaways from the first half of the season for both Alabama and Auburn, because, of course, both teams have played 6 games now. Alabama finds themselves at 5-1. Auburn finds themselves at 3-3. And we've learned a lot, to say the least. I think about both of these teams. And again, Saber brought it up earlier when we were talking about Ty Simpson. But you just look at both of these teams and where they both were after week 1 and the trajectories that they look like they were about to be on were completely different. And now how they've gotten to the halfway point, they've taken completely different paths. So it's been a very interesting first half of the season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So want to share my impressions, my takeaways from Auburn and Alabama at the halfway point of the season. And we'd love to have you jump in on the conversation as well. 205-834-9450 if you would like to join in on the courtesy GMC text line. But I've broken these up into 4 different categories for both Alabama and Auburn. All right, so I have my best surprise for both teams up to this point of the season. I have my biggest disappointment for both teams. I have the one thing I'm optimistic about heading forward into the season, and then I have the one thing that I have as my biggest concern remaining for each team here at the halfway point. So we've been talking about Alabama. We spent a good bit of time on them with Ty Simpson here this morning. So let's start off with the Auburn Tigers. Let's shake it up a little bit. So we'll start off with the biggest surprise that I have for the Auburn Tigers. Again, at the halfway point of the season, and we can look back on these at the end of the year and see, oh, well, did those guys stay on that same trajectory? Did something change? All that kind of good stuff. But for right now, where we are, my biggest surprise for the Auburn Tigers this year, and I'm going to pick an individual player on this one, and that for me would have to be Xavier Atkins, the linebacker there for the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's been an absolute monster for them. He leads the team. So, he transferred from LSU, played very minimally last year. He had 3 total tackles last year. He currently leads Auburn in total tackles with 37. He also is second on the team in sacks. He has 3 sacks. Only Kieron Crawford has more with 4. And then you add to that, he was the guy that had the 70-plus yard interception return against A&M.
Right. Yeah.
That set them up for that touchdown late in that game. He also has a forced fumble and a fumble recovery this year. So he's essentially done everything that you could do as a defender. He has done that so far for Auburn this season. And I think, again, there were a lot of guys that we were excited about. We all know how good Keldrick Falk is, and him going into the draft is probably a first-round pick this upcoming April. We heard so much in the fall about how good Jay Crawford was and some of these other guys, and the secondary was going to be good, and you've got Riddick coming back and Amaris Williams and some of these young guys that are really going to pop off. And Xavier Atkins, after transferring over from LSU, I think a lot of it was just, well, the LSU defense hasn't been great. He hasn't played a ton, so how high should the expectations really be? And I think he's surpassed every expectation that Auburn fans had for him. So Xavier Atkins, definitely my biggest surprise so far on the year for the Auburn Tigers. He has been phenomenal. And I think you could say the entire defense, really. Not that I didn't think they'd be good, but they've been very good so far this season. All right, now the biggest disappointment. I think we could all probably agree on this one. Whether you want to blame it on one person, whether you want to blame it on just the staff, whether you want to blame it on the staff and the player, whatever, at the end of the day, the passing game for Auburn has by far been the biggest disappointment of the season for the Tigers, and it's the reason for a lot of their problems. So Auburn right now, halfway through the year, they are last in the SEC in passing yards per game. They have 167 yards per game average. That means they are a worse passing offense than the Kentucky Wildcats.
That's saying something.
They are worse than Kentucky. That's horrible. There are how many teams in the SEC, Saber?
That'd be 16.
So safe to say there's 16 starting quarterbacks. Now, understand people get hurt and, someone has to come in. But generally speaking, 16 starting quarterbacks.
Yes.
Jackson Arnold has the 18th best quarterback rating in the SEC, and he hasn't thrown an interception. Think about that. He is worse than some other teams' backups so far this year, granted, in a more limited sample size with those guys, and he hasn't turned the ball over.
Yeah, and to be fair, One of those backups is Trinidad Chambliss, who's kind of taken over.
Fair.
But
Fair.
still, yes, when you're of a league with 16 teams, you are 18th best. That's ouch.
Generally want to be in the top 16 somewhere.
At least. Yes.
At least, yes. At least. So, yeah, the passing game, it's been a disaster. And I think, again, right, a lot of it falls on the coaching. But you also have plays like a wide-open touchdown to Singleton in the Georgia game where that's just a ball that's overthrown by a foot or two. And I know, right, you look at that and go, oh, that stinks. All right, they'll go out there and get it next time. No, you won't. Like, those are the plays that you have to make, and Auburn just hasn't been able to make them. And the fact that they continue to not really force feed the ball at times down the field to Cam Coleman is shocking to me. So the passing game for Auburn certainly been the biggest bust of the year as far as the Tigers go, in my opinion. Now, something that I am optimistic about heading forward, I know a lot of people say there's nothing to be optimistic about, but there are. I promise you there are. But the one that I pointed out, because this was a big issue coming out of the Baylor game, and I think they've responded in a nice way and are continuing to get better, and that's the secondary for Auburn, because they gave up 419 yards through the air against Sawyer Robertson and Baylor in week 1. Granted, you won that game, but I think a lot of people walked away and went, ooh, that's going to be a problem. And maybe it still will, but I think since that game, they have done a much, much better job. So if you remove week 1, so from weeks 2 to week 7, the last 5 games for Auburn, they're giving up 187 passing yards a game, which that's pretty solid. That would be 7th in the SEC if that was their average for the entire season. So I think the secondary is continuing to get better. I think having Bo Pribula coming into town, based on what we saw him do last week against Alabama, maybe another opportunity for that secondary to get better. So I certainly think that group has come along nicely and will continue to do so this year for Auburn. And then my biggest concern, I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this. We talked about it a ton yesterday and Monday, but it's the coaching. Honestly, at the end of the day, at this point with Auburn, I need to see something different. I need to see a different final result on the field before I can buy into any sort of turnaround in the second half of the season. And that begins and ends with coaching, in my opinion. You got to put your guys in better situations. You've got to stick with what's working. You can't abandon the run game in the second half of a Georgia game that's 10-10, or you have a 10-3 lead in for the majority of the second half. Those kinds of things are going to have to change. And until that does, I think there's a serious cap on what Auburn can actually achieve on the field. So my biggest concern for Auburn right now would be the coaching.
More so the lack thereof. But
better way to put it, yes.
Yes, I agree with you in that it's the biggest concern, mostly because we think it can be fixed and changed, but it doesn't appear to have any attempts to be doing so, or at least in the last couple of weeks now. Things could change maybe moving forward, but from what we've seen, there's no indication that, or the biggest question, the biggest thing that is probably the hurdle and the major obstacle for this Auburn Tigers team probably just won't get altered. And I'm not saying Hugh Freeze needs to get shown the door, just more so the adjustment or changes in maybe he's not getting through to the kids or what, and especially after the loss of Damari yesterday or a couple days ago. It's probably the biggest challenge, because it's something that especially for most fans and even the players, it's not in their control.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. And it's just got to be better all the way around. I don't care. Again, I know we kind of harped on this a little bit in fall camp and things like that, but I mean, seriously, I don't care who's calling the plays. I don't care if it's Hugh Freeze. I don't care if it really is the system that we talked about. With you have a different guy calling, a different play on first down, second down, third down, whatever it is. Something's got to change. It's got to be better. We're 3 years into this now, and there's no evidence that it's gotten significantly better. And it feels like one time when you correct something, then something else needs to be fixed, and then that needs to be it's a revolving door of issues and excuses, quite frankly, at times, and it's got to get a whole heck of a lot better for Auburn and those guys, and Auburn fans deserve a lot better. But we've spent enough time harping on that this week, and you got a chance to turn your fortunes around against Missouri this weekend, and that would be a very high-quality win for an Auburn team that desperately needs something to hang their hat on.
Auburn's only lost to top 10 teams, so Missouri's not in the top 10.
There you go.
So I'm Lloyd Christmas right now. So you're telling me there's a chance?
That's a that's a very interesting angle there. But yeah, you can't deny that there is some truth to that. So we'll see if that Tiger on Tiger action goes Auburn's way coming up this weekend. But want to share some takeaways from Alabama as well. So what are the surprises, disappointments? What are we optimistic about? What are we concerned about with the Alabama Crimson Tide? Want to hear from you as well. 205-834-9450 on the courtesy GMC text line. We'll get to your text and we'll get to our takeaways from Alabama first half of the season for the Crimson Tide next on JOX. Rolling along on this Wednesday morning. Welcome back into Morning JOX. Conrad and John here with you for a few more moments before we get you ready for McElroy and Kublik in the morning, as they will continue the college football conversation here for you on your home for college football and much else, JOX. As we've been talking about our halfway point impressions, takeaways for Alabama and Auburn. We just did Auburn, going through biggest surprises, disappointments, concerns moving forward, things like that for the Auburn Tigers here as they sit 3-3 at the halfway point. So now we turn our attention to the Alabama Crimson Tide for a few minutes. So Alabama, they sit here at 5-1. They are the number 6 ranked team in the country as it stands right now, and hot off 3 straight ranked wins, going for a 4th this Saturday against Tennessee. So the best surprise for me for Alabama this season, and I think it would be for a lot of people, we talked about it earlier, so I won't spend too much time on it here, but that would be just Ty Simpson, how good Ty Simpson has been. And again, I shared it earlier. I was optimistic about Ty Simpson. I thought he was going to be solid, but by no stretch of the imagination did I think that he would be legitimately a Heisman contender and viewed as maybe the best quarterback in the SEC. Certainly not halfway through the season. So that's been remarkable. And, we talked about it. Saber brought it up, his bounce back, his return since the Florida State game. And, not that loss was necessarily Ty Simpson's fault or anything like that. He was honestly one of the players that probably performed on the better end of things in that matchup, sad to say. But it's the way that he responded and now doing what he's done in SEC play. And I think a lot of it, too, is just he seems to come up clutch in the biggest moments, right? Go back and look at 4th and 8 against Missouri. You go back and look at, some of the final drives against Georgia, even when Alabama wasn't able to put points on the board, just being able to milk that clock and make big throws on 3rd down consistently and 4th down. It's been really, really impressive. So I think Ty Simpson being as good as he is, definitely the best surprise of the season so far for the Alabama Crimson Tide, in my opinion.
He's basically he's number 2 right now in the league in terms of yards passing and yards per game. He's behind Joey Aguilar. Do you know how far behind he is?
Yeah, it's like 2 yards, isn't it?
Yeah, he has 1,678 yards. Aguilar has 1,680. Simpson's passing for 279.7 yards. Aguilar's passing for 280. But the big standout to me, Ty has 16 touchdowns to 1 interception. Aguilar's 14 to 5.
Yes.
I didn't expect this kind of efficiency and this kind of production to come out of him. That's probably the most surprising part. Yes.
And I think that's the thing. The 16 touchdowns make you happy because I think a lot of people saw this stat, but he has now thrown as many touchdowns in 6 games as Jalen Milroe threw in 13 games last year, excuse me. And I know people are happy about that, but I think what you're really happy about is the 1 interception. And was able to bounce back against that. So that's my best surprise for Alabama so far, Ty Simpson. My biggest disappointment, I think you could go either way with this. I know a lot of people would say, it's Ryan Williams. It's Ryan Williams. And fair, Ryan Williams has been disappointing. Ryan Williams has also had some really good games, and he also is averaging the most receiving yards per game of any player on the team. So I understand why some people are not maybe thrilled with Ryan Williams, and he hasn't lived up to the hype, but he's still been a productive player when he's been out on the field for Alabama. So I'm not going to go with Ryan Williams. Mine is just going to be the frequency at which the defense seems to give up big plays. And a lot of it does seem to come in the run game if you really want to focus in on that. But I think it's just it feels like at times they're just letting people run right through them. And to their credit, right, in the past few weeks when that's happened early, they've responded the right way and been able to cut that down over the final half or final 3 quarters of a football game. But maybe let's not, let that happen in the first place. So that's my biggest disappointment is just the defense, which we thought was going to be the strength of this team coming in at times has not been. And it's been the passing game that's been the biggest strength so far. So that needs to continue to get better. Something that I'm optimistic about, and this is something I'm very happy about, and you heard Ryan Grubb talk about him earlier this week, and that is the offensive line, but particularly the right tackle spot. Look, I wanted to give Wilkin Formby the benefit of the doubt, but that guy needs serious help, especially when it comes to pass protection. And I'm not saying that there's not room for him. You need depth. You need guys that can rotate in. I understand that. He's gotten to play some guard as well. But Michael Carroll, if he is officially ready, like Ryan Grubb said earlier this week, like he's getting very close to being an every down kind of player. If Michael Carroll, the true freshman, takes over at right tackle, I feel very optimistic that will make the whole offensive line better, but that one spot in particular that's been a pain point. Michael Carroll has been so impressive as a true freshman, and there's going to be bumps along the way, right? That's what happens with these young guys, but I think you get him in now with the hopes that by the time postseason play comes around, if you find yourself in the playoff, that he is a somewhat of a seasoned veteran as a true freshman and ready for those battles to come. So I think that's big there for Alabama if Michael Carroll continues to come along like it looks like he is at right tackle.
I don't disagree. That's been no, I think you're right.
It's been it's been an issue.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap up with this. The biggest concern for me moving forward for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So the easy answer is the kicking game. Kicking game hasn't been good, and I understand that's important. And I said on 3-Man Front the other day, I feel like that might come back and bite you at some point. It feels like eventually you're going to get into a game where you have to make a clutch kick in the fourth quarter, and can Talty make that kick? Maybe he will, but I don't think you have a ton of confidence in that right now if you're Alabama. So I would look at the kicking game, but if I had to go somewhere outside of just special teams in the kicking game, I certainly think it's the inability to score at times in the second half. That is something that will kill Alabama. It's great what you did against Georgia in the first half. It's great what you did against Missouri going up 14-7 early in that game. It's great that you scored a late touchdown against Vanderbilt to make the score look a little bit better than it ultimately was. But these are games that I can't help but watch and go, feels like you're leaving about 10 points on the field in all three of those games that you've won. You've won them. But at what point do you start taking those and converting those, finishing those drives that turn into a turnover on downs at the 35-yard line, and that turns into a field goal or turns into a touchdown, or a 47-yard field goal attempt that you can then convert into a touchdown in the red zone instead of having to rely on the kicking game. Those are things that Alabama needs to continue to get better about, and that goes back to what you heard from Ty Simpson earlier, what we've heard from Ryan Grubb this week as well. As good as they have looked, they understand that there's still a lot left to improve on, and if they can get that figured out, that's when I think you start seeing Alabama go from, okay, man, glad that we won that game, to, man, they're dominating some people and winning by multiple scores, which we haven't seen them do in SEC play yet. So that would be my takeaways for Alabama at the halfway point of the season. Anything you think I was way off on there, say, Barry?
No, that the concern in the second half was worrisome to me. It's part of the reason why I thought Alabama would win the game, but as close as that point spread was against Missouri, I thought they were covered because, yes, if you look back on paper, what are you talking about? Alabama put up 16 points against Vanderbilt. Well, if not for that late Jam Miller semi-garbage time touchdown, I mean, Alabama put up, quote, only 9 points. But the takeaway to me was more so that they had these 3 long drives but only got field goals out of them from a team that earlier had been able to put up points, especially with Georgia. Like, you were able to put up points in the first half, and you were able to have long drives, and ultimately that helped win the game.
Yeah.
But if you could put points up with that, that would leave no doubt. That wouldn't give Georgia, that wouldn't have given them that shot too. Look what happened to Georgia against Auburn. Auburn thought they had a shot. Things were kind of going well, and then Georgia not only had that long drive, they scored on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that erased all of the doubt. Meanwhile, Missouri had the ball in hand with a chance to not only side up, but to win late. Major concern.
Yeah, no, I think that's very valid. And again, when you're winning games against top 25 teams and you have things to improve on, I think you'll take it. So a couple of you chiming in on the Courtesy GMC text line, a lot of you praising Ty Simpson and the offense for Alabama at the halfway mark. Some of you asking for an update on Jam Miller. He's going through concussion protocol, but we'll have more for that of that for you tomorrow at 6 a.m. because availability reports will come out tonight. We'll have a clearer picture of that in the morning. So we're back tomorrow at 6 a.m. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. They're up next.